Fast food employees. What is the most disgusting secret your chain hides? Not gonna say which chain, but the one I used to work, it was very clean and well managed. The only real secret we had was, well, nobody was drinking the sodas they thought they were. We didn't use regular syrup in the fountain machines. If you ordered a Coke, you got Panda Cola. If you ordered a 7-Up, you got Panda Lime Up. Sorry.
That's a classic example of just doing what you gotta do, I guess. It's wild how something so simple can skew expectations. I mean, you think you're having a regular drink, but it's something totally different. Makes you wonder what else is out there that we don't know about. Just goes to show that not everything is what it seems, especially in the food industry.
I work at McDonald's where my father supervises. All the stores he supervises are incredible clean and pass every health inspection with flying colors because my father is super anal about cleanliness. Probably the most disgusting secret we have is that you can order a sausage McMuffin and folded eggs on the side, and it will be a whole $1 cheaper than a sausage egg McMuffin.
That's pretty interesting. The whole cleanliness thing makes sense, especially with food places. It is funny how they price things though. $1 difference for basically the same thing is a little odd. I guess it shows how some things in fast food can be more about perception than the actual product. But hey, as long as the food is good and the place is clean, that's what matters.
I worked at Sonic in high school. Do not, ever, get the grilled chicken. Sure, it's grilled, from a frozen chicken patty. After it was cooked, it was then thrown into a steam broiler to keep it warm. The rule book said replace them every 2 hours, but my manager would yell at me if I pulled them out earlier than 4 hours. After 2 hours, the chicken becomes hard and rubbery and tastes like crap. Besides that, the worst thing about that place was the floors were greasy as fuck, and even proper work shoes didn't help prevent slipping.
That sounds rough. I had a similar gig at a fast food place. The food was questionable, and the management didn't really care about quality. I remember slipping on the floors too, just like you described. It was a mess, but we all got through it, sharing stories in the back to make it a bit more bearable. Those jobs definitely teach you a lot about what to avoid.
I worked at a financially failing Domino's pizza franchise. Behind the scenes, we're incredibly clean. Much cleaner than my own home. The entire restaurant was disassembled and cleaned each night. We'd close at 2 a.m. and not leave until 3 a.m. or so. To open the store, you need to reassemble everything. All products have dates. Food was thrown away on their date. Temperatures checked by staff. Inspections by the county health agency were a periodic thing. The medical device company I now work for. Dirty, cheats the rules, makes fake documents. I think we even have fake document department that just falsifies things that are expensive to do. TLDR failing franchise was clean and followed the rules.
It's interesting how the two jobs are so different. At Domino's, everything was about maintaining high standards, even if the business was struggling. I can see how that kind of discipline is important. Then you move to a place that bends the rules, and it feels pretty chaotic. Makes you appreciate that effort even more. Kind of shows how values can shift between industries.
I worked at McDonald's and, honestly, there wasn't really anything exceedingly gross or secret. These days, the big fast food chains are pretty transparent about how their food is produced. If anything was gross, it was because of somebody doing something they weren't supposed to that was against company policy. If anything, I guess I always thought it a little unnerving that the smaller hamburger patties, the non-quarter pounder ones, went from frozen to fully cooked in about 20 seconds if I remember right. Beyond that, everything seemed legit. If anything, I would be more worried about smaller, independent restaurants, diners, etc. Edit. Keep in mind that when you work at a fast food restaurant, it's not like you're initiated into a secret society or anything. If there were any secrets about the food, they would be leaked in no time, as fast food chains employ millions of workers around the world.
Working at a fast food place can be pretty normal. I remember a friend telling me how nothing surprising happened at McDonald's. It was just standard protocol. He mentioned how fast they cook those smaller burgers, which was a bit wild. But nothing really shady went on, just regular stuff. It felt like the public was more curious about the small diners than the big chains. Workers just do their jobs, nothing secretive about it.
I don't know if anyone will be able to shed light on the quality of a chain versus the quality of local management. I used to work at Chick-fil-A, and most employees were just dumb teenagers, so things weren't always done by the book, mostly in regards to hold times or whatever. Like the hold time is 20 minutes, and it might stay out 30 minutes before going into the bin to be made into chicken salad. But I justified it to myself by thinking if you cooked at home, set out food for dinner, ate with your family, and then refrigerated it, the leftovers you make the next day world have gone through worse conditions, and that's without a heat lamp. Also, we had a lot of paper and food waste.
That's an interesting take. Working at a fast food place can show you how things actually operate behind the scenes. I remember my friend working at a chain restaurant too. They always had stories about how timing and management varied a lot. Makes you think about food safety and waste in a different light. It's kind of wild how casual things can get when a lot of teenagers are just trying to get through their shifts.
Worked at Taco Bell in college. The most disgusting thing was probably that salaried managers made about the same or less per hour than hourly wage employees. There was really nothing unsanitary. The food is all low-quality cheap shit, of course, but there's nothing actually wrong with it. I don't know how the hell people get sick after eating there. They must have incredibly weak digestive systems. There's never any raw meat in the store. It all comes pre-cooked and just gets warmed up. Oh, actually thought of one thing. The taco salad bowls are all fried up in the morning, so if you get one late in the day, it's been sitting in the warmer for a while. That's about it. Sometimes the chalupa shells sit around a while too. If you want fresh ones, just ask. It's appreciated if you come inside the store though, so it doesn't affect the drive-through times, as they take a couple minutes to fry.
I worked at a fast food place too. It was interesting to see how everything worked behind the scenes. We had some items that were meant to be fresh, but they often would sit around longer than they should. Customers would complain about the wait, but we were just trying to keep up with orders. If you wanted something hot, it was best to ask nicely. It made the job a bit more manageable.
I worked at Little Caesars in Sumner, Washington. The cheese pizza cost $5.99, whilst the pepperoni pizza cost $5.99. The manager told me that it's that way because the customers are informed that more cheese is added onto the cheese pizza. This was a blatant lie, as we put equal amounts of cheese on all the pizzas. The cheese is added before any other toppings. Dough, sauce, cheese, whatever you want to imagine. So you don't really know which ones are going to be baked as pepperoni, vegetarian, etc.
Sounds like an interesting gig at Little Caesars. It's funny how pricing can be based on misleading info. The assembly line for pizzas seems straightforward, but I guess customers buy into the idea that they're getting something special. At least you had a front row seat to that. It's just a pizza place, but the little quirks keep it interesting.
Alright, I've worked in fast food, in casual dining, and fine dining in kitchens in front of house. In my experience, casual dining is usually the most dirty/unsanitary. In fast food, supervision and rules are the most strict, so they're usually pretty clean. In fine dining, you have kitchen staff that takes pride in their work and actually knows why all those health department rules exist. They know how to handle raw meats, contaminants, and allergens correctly. They don't follow all the rules to the letter, but they know their shit and they care. So stuff is usually pretty damn clean and food safety is important to them. Casual dining, especially non-chains, is right at the intersection of people not knowing/caring about food safety and not having strict rules and supervision. That's where shit gets gross. Of course, these are just generalizations, but pretty true in my experience.
It's interesting how different dining experiences shape our views on cleanliness. I had a friend who worked at a casual dining place. She would always share stories about the kitchen, like how nobody seemed to care too much about washing their hands. It made me rethink where to eat. You really don't know what's happening behind the scenes until you hear someone's experience. It definitely changed my approach to dining out.
I doubt anyone would read this, but here's something you might not realize. If it is a chain that has lots of locations over multiple states, think Burger King, Steak and Shake, Five Guys, they don't really have disgusting secrets that they keep from the public. It is the smaller mom-plus-pop places you actually have to worry about. You don't know how much they care about the business, or if anything is being done to code.
It's interesting to think about. I remember going to a small diner once. It looked cozy but kind of run down. The food was decent, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they might not be keeping everything up to code. I guess it's a reminder to pay attention to where we eat. Sometimes the bigger chains might be a safer bet, even if they're not as charming.
Ick, what you qualify as disgusting, but I worked at a Quiznos. My boss told us to skim on everything. Take off at least an inch for each size breads, put less meat, put less veggies, less sauce. When we had coupons, she'd take off meat after they'd pay, if she didn't see them in their hands beforehand. It was pretty horrible, but I never skimmed as much.
It's interesting how some places operate. I had a friend who worked at a fast food joint, and they had similar issues. Management would push to cut costs by reducing portions. He felt bad for the customers because they were paying full price for less food. It made him question the ethics of the job. Not everyone follows that rule, though. Some people just want to do a good job, no matter what.
So back in high school, I worked at a FF joint. I've been setting up the soft serve ice cream machine, scooping it with a plastic spatula. Put spatula on counter next to French fry machine. Turn around with bucked, elbow hit counter. Plastic spatula fell into fryer. I almost out of reflex went to grab the spatula as it slowly melted / sunk into the oil. Manager walked up and put a basket of French fries in the fryer. I just stood there and didn't know what to do. TLDR, y'all ate some plastic-coated French fries.
That's a pretty wild story. Working in fast food can definitely have its moments. It's strange how you can just freeze in a situation like that, especially when something's melting away right in front of you. I guess those fries had a little something extra that day. Makes you think about what really goes into your food. Can't say I'd want to be in that position, though.
Our manager is really stingy when it comes to throwing away food. He will keep leftover eggs from breakfast and use it the next day, and if any of the food on the line looks dry or is starting to look thick, he'll just pour a little water in it, and there you go, fresh beans. Sometimes when we receive the truck full of veggies, the tomatoes are really squishy and brown. I work at Taco Cabana, and luckily for you guys, they're only located in Texas.
That's interesting. Sounds like your manager is trying to stretch the food budget as much as he can. I guess it's all about making things last. I can see how some people might find it clever, while others could see it as a bit questionable. Not sure I'd want to eat those fresh beans or squishy tomatoes, though. Just part of working in the food industry, I suppose.
It's been a couple decades since this happened, but I had a friend who worked at a MCD. They would cook chicken nuggets and put them in a warmer with a 25-minute timer. After the 25 minutes, they were supposed to throw away the nuggets and cook new ones. The one he worked at just hit the timer over and over. Who know how long those nugget-shaped petri dishes would sit in that warmer waiting for an unsuspecting customer?
That's pretty wild. Just thinking about how many people probably ate those nuggets without knowing. It's kind of crazy to think about the stuff that goes on in fast food places. My friend always joked about it, like it was normal. Not sure if everyone's got stories like that, but it definitely makes you wonder what else happens behind the scenes.
Okay, everyone. I just left my job at Wendy's that I've been at for quite some time. I worked my last shift this last Friday. You want to know why? We get treated like shit. That's the most disgusting thing. That's the big secret. I know at any job the potential for that will always be there. But it gets to the point where when my felon coworker is throwing food at me and spraying me in the face with a power hose and drunk people are coming in, reaching across my counter and threatening me and nothing is getting done about it, I knew I have to leave. And I did. Best thing I ever did to improve my quality of life.
Sounds like a rough time at Wendy's. Dealing with difficult coworkers and rude customers can really wear you down. Sometimes you just have to prioritize your well-being over a job. It's good to hear you took that step and moved on. Life's too short to stay in a place that doesn't respect you. Hope your next gig treats you better.
Worked at a Papa John's in Hampton, Virginia for 2 days. First day. The day I went in and they hired me, I worked a small 4-hour shift for training. The next day, we had the health inspector come through, and I saw people picking up food and utensils off the floor repeatedly and still using them without cleaning or throwing away. Quit the next day before starting my shift and never ate from there again.
That's a rough experience. It's pretty unsettling to see that kind of hygiene, especially while working there. I'm not surprised you decided to quit right after that. It's tough to stay in a job where you can't trust the food safety. Walking away was probably the best choice, and avoiding their food makes sense. Glad you got out of there before it got worse.
I guess this is kind of the opposite of what you're asking, but I just got a job at Chick-fil-A, working in the kitchen, and it's super clean, not to mention the other employees are super clean and super nice, even in the back. Our store isn't even the cleanest store in the area either. This is my first experience working in a restaurant, but my brother has worked in the food industry before, and he has lost his appetite for eating at the places he's worked every time. That hasn't happened to me yet. I'm actually quite impressed. Now that I'm hearing myself say this, I sound like I'm advertising, but I don't care. Working there is the bomb, and you're a hell of a lot safer eating there than anywhere else.
It's interesting how work changes your perspective on things. Your brother's experience makes sense. It's easy to lose interest in what you see daily. But it's cool that you're still enjoying it. I guess it shows that a good environment can really make a difference. Plus, it's nice to hear a positive side about fast food for once. You never know, it might even make you appreciate the food more.
Former gas station employee, don't get a slushie. Mold grows around all of the gadgets in there. We only cleaned it every few weeks. Also worked at O'Charlie's and watched a guy blow a snot rocket into the deep fryer once. And if you ordered a filet well done, the grill cook probably squeezed all the blood out of it before it got thrown on the grill.
That brings back some memories. A friend of mine worked at a fast food place and saw some pretty unsanitary things too. They had a strict schedule for cleaning, but it was often ignored. You'd be surprised at what goes on behind the scenes. Makes you think twice about what you eat sometimes. Overall, it's just a reminder to be cautious with food places. You never know what you might find.
Yes. They are rarely cleaned out. Like almost never. Bugs, dirt, food particles, whatever. At 2 previous restaurant jobs, I felt bad that customers were getting gross ice. Both places had a single machine, and mentioned it to my managers at the time. They both brushed it off as having better things to do with my time, so I used to accidentally kick the plug out of the wall in the evenings, come in the next day, and find a half-melted ice machine. I was stuck cleaning it, but it was worth it, since I felt better about the ice being served. We had to use ice from the store down the street for the rest of the day, but it wasn't like it cost the restaurants much money. One bartender told me he would accidentally drop/break a glass into an ice machine to serve the same purpose if the management wasn't being cool about it. Broken glass equals scoop out and dump all the ice. and might as well clean the thing since it's empty.
That's an interesting way to handle things. I get the frustration with dirty ice machines. It's kind of surprising how little managers care about something that affects customers directly. It's like those little things matter, but some just brush it off. Your method was creative, though. I can see why you'd want to take care of that. It's a mess if customers get bad ice. It's wild what some workers will do to fix the issue.
I used to run a night crew at a Burger King back in '99, and I had the ice machines cleaned every 3 days because of how bad they got. The first time I had it done, the water was pure black from all the crap inside, of course, because it probably had never been cleaned by anyone who was managing the store at the time. It resulted in a broken ice machine because the trays that freeze the water weren't put back properly. I just told the general manager that it was really weird when we opened the ice machine to get ice. It was just water, and I wasn't sure how it got that way. I also had the bathrooms cleaned with a hose one time because they had a health inspection coming up, and I was in charge of making sure the place got deep cleaned. I figured a hose would be quicker than going in with towels and wiping behind toilet seats. The shit that came off the underside of toilets. My God.
Running that night cruise sounds rough. Cleaning those ice machines every few days must have been a task. It's kind of wild to think the machine was left untouched for so long. The black water must have been something else. The bathroom cleaning with a hose makes sense, though. Sometimes you just need to tackle the mess quickly, especially with a health inspection on the way. Definitely not a job for everyone.
One time I ordered a pizza from Papa John's, and this college kid arrives with it, and we do our transaction. Then he says, could I borrow your phone? I locked my keys in the car, so I let him use my cell to call his workplace. I invited him in because it was like 30 degrees outside, and he didn't have a coat on, so we did tequila shots together until one of his coworkers arrived to pick him up.
That's a chill story. It's nice you helped the guy out. Not everyone would invite a stranger in like that. Doing tequila shots is a pretty casual way to pass the time. It's wild how sometimes these little moments can turn into something memorable. Plus, I guess he got a good story to tell his friends too. Just goes to show, you never know who you might meet.
The Papa Murphy's by me, before it closed, had the highest high school kids in town working at it. One time I ordered a pizza, and the kid making it started putting on onions, and then more onions, and then more until there was an onion pile that was at least 3 inches. I looked at the other register guy who seemed a little less high, and he was like, hey Andy, why don't you go in the back for a while? And he made me a new pizza.
That sounds like a typical night at a pizza place. High school kids just trying to keep it together, I guess. I can picture the chaos behind the counter. The guy who stepped in probably had seen it all before. It's funny how some things get out of hand like that. Good thing you got a new pizza instead of an onion mountain.
What's ironic about that is that back in the 90s, they used to have posters in their stores comparing side by side their employees to employees of other pizza companies. On the Papa John's side, it had the most clean-cut worker you could imagine, pressed khakis and an ironed, tucked-in shirt. While on the competitor side, I think they were particularly aiming at Pizza Hut. They showed what looked to be some teenager with wild hair, baggy pants, and half-untucked shirt. Basically your typical stoner. I just find it funny how they're now everything that they used to act like they were above.
It's interesting how things shift over time. Back then, they wanted to show a contrast between professionalism and laid-back vibes in the pizza industry. Now, it seems like they've embraced that casual image completely. Kinda makes you wonder if they realized the clean-cut look wasn't as essential as they thought. The irony is pretty clear, and it's a reminder that perceptions can change.
Pizza employees in general. I worked a pizza place for a while, and me and my coworker would smoke in the back all the time. One time I got way too high and tried to make marinara sauce. My boss had THR measurements on a piece of paper. It was just a matter of filling a massive pot with like 10 gallons of tomatoes and then adding the herbs and spice. I could not read measurements to save my life, and I got sauce everywhere. It looked like a murder scene. My coworker clearly saw that I was not capable of doing this, so he sent me to ShopRite to grab a few things we needed, which was another disaster. Don't smoke a 1-gram blunt at work.
I get it. Working in a pizza place is just chaos sometimes. That sauce story sounds like it escalated quickly. Trying to handle a big pot with everything going on must have been a mess. Your coworker definitely did the right thing sending you out. It's funny how a moment of chill can turn into total chaos at work. Yeah, maybe sticking to a small joint is better next time.
My aunt got hired to be a manager at a Papa John's. She had something like 15 plus years of manager experience. They were training her for the basics as a normal employee before she got trained for management, when like all the people involved in hiring her got fired. She ended up working like 1 day a week for 1.5 hours before eventually quitting. Weirdest and least professional situation I've ever heard of.
That's a strange one. It's tough when you have a lot of experience, but things just don't click. Getting fired right after hiring her must have been a red flag. Working so little for a role like that doesn't make sense. Probably felt like a waste of time. Sometimes those job situations are just chaotic, and quitting seems like the only option.
That would not fly at the Panera I worked at, though it does remind me of the time when a customer complained that the decaf wasn't decaf. I told my manager. He asked me if I thought it was decaf, and I was pretty sure it was the last batch I had made and the decaf bag was on top of my garbage. He told me to just take it back and pretend I rebrewed it / got another one. The customer was satisfied, LOL.
That sounds like something that would happen in a cafe. I remember when I worked at a coffee shop, we had a similar situation. A customer was upset about their drink, and our manager just told us to remake it without actually making a new one. It was kind of funny, but I felt bad for the customer, thinking they were getting something fresh when they weren't. Just goes to show how things can get a bit tricky in those places.
Used to have a customer come in every morning at 3:30 to 4 a.m. from a factory for his break or something. Small coffee cake, and a cookie. Then he'd go piss all over the toilet and the floor of the bathrooms I had cleaned between 2.30 and 3. Couldn't push the bathroom cleaning any later than that because other things were time sensitive and we had to start prepping for the morning staff. So one day we waited until he left the bathroom to sit down with the paper again. And we brought out the mop and some paper towel and told him he could either clean it and learn to aim or stop coming back. He opted to walk out. We refused him service the next night and he didn't return, thank fuck.
That sounds frustrating. It's annoying when customers don't respect the place. It's good you set a boundary. Sometimes people don't realize the impact of their actions. I had a similar experience with someone who always left a mess. After a while, I just had to say something. They eventually got the hint and stopped coming around. It's a relief when people respect your space.
This is from McDonald's UK. Friends of mine are organic free-range chicken farmers, producing around 10,000 eggs a day. All their product goes to McDonald's, presumably for Egg McMuffins. Organic eggs. I know for a fact that a popular UK French fry manufacturer makes the fries for McDonald's. The McDonald's fries line in the factories use organic potatoes. A lot of the beef used in McDonald's UK is coming from organic beef farms. I used to be a McDonald's hater, but have begrudgingly changed my views recently.
It's interesting to hear about your friends in the organic farming business, especially supplying to McDonald's. The fact that they produce so many eggs for something as simple as an Egg McMuffin shows the scale of it all. Learning about the organic potatoes and beef used in their products kinda shifts the perspective. Sounds like a surprising change in your views on McDonald's too. Sometimes it's good to reevaluate what we think we know.
I agree. I worked in fast food and chain restaurants as a teenager and college student, and most are purpose-built for hygiene/sanitation. For example, The food prep areas were built with separate sinks and storage units from the cleaning areas. Fridge and freezer trays for meat only fit in the bottoms of the units so that meat juice didn't drip down onto other items. The only dirty stuff I saw was 100% intentional.
That's interesting. I had a friend who worked at a similar place. They always talked about how strict the rules were for hygiene. They'd mention how management kept a close eye on everything. If someone messed up, they'd get in trouble fast. It made me think about how careless people can be, but most of the time, it's just people following the guidelines and doing their jobs.
I think it depends on which fast food restaurants you go to and where they are located. There's a McDonald's downtown that is at an intersection that's basically the homeless person hangout spot and local open-air drug market. That place is disgusting and the employees are miserable. It's the first fast food place that I encountered that matched other people's horror stories about fast food places. Further out from the city center, they're all clean and fine places.
I get that. There are definitely some fast food spots that just have a vibe, right? Like you walk in and it's immediately clear it's not a good scene. I had a friend who worked at one of those sketchy locations. He had stories about dealing with rude customers and just a general lack of care all around. It's wild how location can totally change the experience.
A lot of people that haven't worked in the food industry don't understand how amazingly strict restaurant safety grades are. The ones that post a letter or score for your restaurant. A lot of the points that are deducted don't necessarily reflect unsanitary conditions, and even the most minuscule infraction will result in points off your score. If you see a restaurant with a score of 100%, that's really very difficult to achieve.
Yeah, I get that. A friend of mine managed a diner, and they stressed over every little detail to keep the grade up. One time, they got points off just because a napkin fell on the floor. It's wild how something so small can affect the overall score. People don't realize the pressure they're under. A perfect score is like winning the lottery for those places.
I'm sure the A&W you worked at was fine and ordinary, but every single one I've ever been to has provided me with an experience that only something from the dank underbelly of society could provide. I stopped in one while traveling once, and the skinny Eminem wannabe behind the counter took my order, and in the middle of my order he yelled out, "Damn, they be stankin' in here. Dill, close yo legs." He wasn't talking to me, I don't think, but it was still really weird and rude as fuck. And my hot dog looked like a red, shriveled dick. It was as if that hot dog had fallen behind a cabinet and had been lying there since the store's opening, getting cooked repeatedly by the stank vapors escaping only from the grease traps on the floor. I was afraid if I bit into it, plumes of dusty smoke would be released into the atmosphere, likely killing me or someone close by.
That's a pretty wild experience. It's funny how places like that can be so random. I remember going to a fast food joint where the vibe was off too. The staff were just shouting at each other like it was a battle zone. My food came out looking questionable, and I just hoped it would be edible. Sometimes you just roll the dice with those kinds of stops. Not everything is about gourmet food, I guess.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love,